Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Bapak, Ibu, dan rekan-rekan para donatur, para pembeli tutorial dari Rumah Berdaya Zoka atau Rumah Belajar Zoka. Terima kasih atas partisipasi Bapak Ibu untuk membeli video kami, karena dari penjualan bersih kegiatan ini akan digunakan untuk membangun PLK Difabel atau Balai Latihan Kewirausahaan Difabel dan juga operasional yayasan ya gitu. Nah, Bapak Ibu, perlu kami informasikan rumah belajar Zoka ini didirikan oleh Yayasan Zoka atau Yayasan Zohara Kasim Hasan. Yayasan Zoka sendiri berdiri tahun 2014 akhir atau 2015 aktivitasnya dimulai ya gitu. Walaupun sebenarnya aktivitas informalnya sudah dimulai sejak 2008. Jadi sudah 7 tahun yang lalu sebenarnya sebelum menjadi formal sebagai sebuah badan hukum. Kegiatan kami banyak macamnya, ragamnya, semuanya berbasis sosial, dan kami sedang membina para tunanetra yang ada di Indonesia. Dan dream kami, mimpi kami adalah mempunyai balai latihan kewirausahaan difabel yang bisa membantu kegiatan ekonomi para difabel. Dan kami dahulukan dengan tunanetra terlebih dahulu, kemudian baru kita melangkah ke mereka yang difabel lainnya ya. Kami sendiri menyebut tunanetra sebagai difabel visual, karena menurut kami tunanetra yang artinya tanpa mata ada kesalahan, mereka tetap bisa melihat cuma dengan cara berbeda ya. Jadi internal di dalam kalbunya yang melihat gitu. Nah, program hari ini dibuat dalam rangka galang dana sekaligus mencerdaskan umat. Jadi kami akan mengadakan berbagai macam kegiatan pembelajaran yang dari situ ditukar dengan infak, sedekah, ataupun kadang-kadang berbasis harga jual gitu. Yang uangnya digunakan untuk operasional termasuk nanti pengumpulan dana di Fabel, gitu. Termasuk pemberdayaan tunanetra ya gitu. Nah, Bapak Ibu, hari ini kami akan presentasikan sebuah teknik metode penulisan surat penjualan maupun dalam bentuk brosur, dalam bentuk broadcast atau apapun yang dikembangkan oleh pakarnya bernama Joe Vitale. Joe Vitale adalah seorang pakar hypnotic writing karena bukunya ada, jadi dia menulis bahasa hipnosis untuk penjualan dan ia mengajarkan sudah puluhan tahun, dan hari ini kita bawa learning lesson atau lesson pembelajaran dari Joe Vitale terhadap kegiatan penulisan copywriting atau menulis iklan ya gitu. Nah, terima kasih Bapak Ibu sekali lagi atas kegiatan kami, karena di balik kegiatan kami ini adalah eh, ada tunanetra di belakang kami, ada dhuafa di belakang kami. Jadi di belakang kami banyak orang yang perlu disantuni, bukan hanya disantuni dalam konteks kita memberi terus, tapi kita ingin mencetak para pebisnis dari golongan mereka yang akhirnya biasanya nanti mereka akan hidup sendiri. Itu misi kami di dalam kegiatan kita. Baik, kita akan mulai materi kita dari seorang bernama Joe Vitale. Siapa itu Joe Vitale? Lahir 29 Desember 1953, sekarang di Texas tinggalnya gitu. Joe Vitale adalah pengarang buku, dia sudah mengarang banyak buku. Ada hypnotic writing, ada 7 lost secret, ada itu kata yang hilang. Yang ini semua isinya copywriting. Namun di lain itu, karena Joe Vitale juga adalah salah satu pemeran film The Secret, film yang menjelaskan tentang law attraction atau hukum tarik menarik, maka banyak pelatihan Joe Vitale basisnya itu. Kemudian dia jelas copywriting, dia juga seorang penulis berbagai macam iklan. Jadi banyak orang datang ke sana mintain iklannya, baik UKM maupun perusahaan-perusahaan sudah besar. Joe Vitale itu sendiri pernah berada dalam kondisi homeless, tidak punya rumah, ditinggalnya di mobil gitu. Dan copywriting menjadi salah satu jalan keluar bagi dia untuk merubah hidupnya gitu. Dan dari situ dia mengarang buku dan berbagai macam tulisan. Dia adalah penulis yang hebat, penulis yang basisnya adalah hipnosis. Apa itu hipnosis? Kurang lebih kita lihat dulu sebelum masuk ke pemahaman hipnosis. Kita lihat lingkaran hitam itu sebenarnya sama antara kiri dan kanan gitu. Yang membedakan adalah kalau dari saya adalah sebelah kiri, yaitu sebelahnya kecil-kecil sehingga dia terlihat besar, sementara yang sebelahnya yang birunya besar, yang hitamnya terlihat lebih kecil gitu. Apa artinya? Artinya inilah tentang hipnosis. Jadi sebuah realita sebenarnya adalah persepsi. Jadi sebuah realita itu tidak bisa dikatakan benar-benar terjadi karena bisa saja ada cara berpikir yang melatar belakangi sebuah cara pandang itu. Maka ada istilah peta bukan wilayah sebenarnya gitu. Kelihatan lebih besar yang kiri dari sisi saya, tapi sebenarnya sama karena perbedaan menjejerkan perbedaan penyelarasan. Maka kalau kita seorang copywriter, kita harus memastikan bahwa apa yang dia beli tidak lebih besar atau minimal sama. Yang bagus adalah lebih kecil dari pengorbanan yang dia berikan gitu. Nah, ini disebut dengan value atau nilai ya gitu. Karena itu membandingkan antara bawah dan atas. Membandingkan dengan apa yang dia korbankan dengan manfaat yang didapatkan. Bila yang atas lebih besar, maka itu dianggap bernilai gitu. Oke, itu kurang lebih konsep hipnosis. Jadi sebenarnya hipnosis seperti ini ya. Jadi eh, apapun penjualan selalu diarahkan ke bawah sadar tempat emosi berada. Namun untuk menembus bawah sadar ada area critical area yang perlu kita tembus. Karena bila kata-kata kita atau sebuah penawaran yang sifatnya sudah gaya lama itu akan ditolak ya gitu. Tapi kalau hal baru memastikan membuat penasaran itu akan membuka pintu gerbangnya sehingga kata kita masuk ke dalam internalnya menembus satu area bawah sadar tempat emosi berada. Nah, cara menembus bawah sadar itu ada dua. Pertama dengan metode hipnosis, tarik nafas, turun, pejamkan mata itu hipnosis. Kita mengistirahatkan pikiran sadar. Sementara cara ini tidak bisa dijalankan di kehidupan nyata. Maka digunakan bagaimana caranya menembus critical area pada kondisi alert atau kondisi waking ya, kondisi sadar gitu. Maka digunakan sebuah metode dari yang dikembangkan oleh legenda hipnoterapis namanya Milton Erickson, namanya TDS Trance Derivational Shot, yaitu sebuah kata-kata yang memancing rasa penasaran sehingga gerbang bawah sadar dibuka, ke disitulah sugesti masuk. Misal, ada orang menawarkan asuransi. Apabila orang menawarkan apa, ini ada diskon besar dan sebagainya, orang sudah ngerti ini asuransi dan sudah banyak. Jadi dia tidak akan menembus critical area. Tapi kalau dia katakan, Pak, mau nggak? Bila nanti saat Bapak sudah tidak ada di dunia ini, maka putra-putri Bapak masih bisa menikmati hasil karya Bapak, kekayaan Bapak. Dengan jumlah signifikan sehingga dia bisa meneruskan sekolah, sehingga tetap bisa sukses gitu. Tentu orang tua mau ya dengan ini gitu. Dan ini dia sebenarnya dia jual asuransi. Jadi ketika dia sudah mikirkan kalau saat dia meninggal gimana-gimana, itu menembus pikiran bawah sadar karena pikiran bawah sadar pertama dia memikirkan, ketika memikirkan ikut terlibat maka data masuk. Jadi itu lengah gitu. Oke, itu kurang lebih. Nah, Bapak Ibu, nanti kita akan belajar tentang balai thinking structure yang dikembangkan oleh balai training. Jadi setiap habis pelatihan, Bapak Ibu membuat tabel seperti ini, kemudian kembangkan apapun dari semua materi yang sudah disampaikan dengan dari mulai kata apa, misalnya apa itu konsep copywriting, apa yang membedakan copywriting dengan hypnotic writing, apa yang membedakan apa dan apa yang membuat apa, pokoknya buat pertanyaan sebanyak-banyaknya dari apa, kemudian analyzing, buat pertanyaan yang mulai dari kenapa ini harus saya pelajari dan sebagainya. Di linking kita menggunakan semua sumber daya untuk menemukan solusi. Jadi ataupun menghubungkan antara kondisi real dengan kondisi yang sedang dihadapi. Gitu. Dia akan nanya, bagaimana ini bisa bermanfaat dengan saya? Bagaimana ini bisa mempunyai meningkatkan nilai prestasi kerja saya gitu. Jadi dimulai buat pertanyaan dengan bagaimana. Dan terakhir, gunakan apa selanjutnya. apa selanjutnya jika ini terjadi gitu. Dan ini tentang empowering. Jadi tugas Bapak Ibu setiap habis selesai pelatihan adalah gunakan pertanyaan sebanyak mungkin, kemudian cobalah jawab, review dari semua materi yang ada gitu. Insya Allah ini bisa membuat kita jadi lebih paham akan sebuah ilmu gitu. Nah yuk sekarang kita masuk ke Joe Vitale. Apa kata Joe Vitale tentang dirinya dan bagaimana memulai konsep atau dia berubah menjadi seorang copywriter gitu. Ini kita lihat videonya.
What I do, what I do, da do, da.
Bentar.
About one of my favorite subjects.
All right, here we are. Hi, Joe. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Been looking forward to this moment. I get to talk about one of my favorite subjects, copywriting.
Ya, ini Joe Vitale sedang diwawancari dan dia sedang senang hari ini bicara tentang copywriting. Gitu.
Awesome. I'm glad you're as enthusiastic about this as I am. I
am.
I wanted to say first of all, thank you for agreeing to do this, to come on and talk to our community. I've been a big fan of yours, as you know, for quite a while now. Big fan of your book, Hypnotic Writing, which obviously
thank you.
About a bit today. One of my all-time favorites. Still got it on our bookshelf in the agency. And like I was saying, I managed to pester you every few years, and you've always been kind enough to respond to me, and get involved and give me the time of day. So I really appreciate that.
You're a likable pest. You're easy to say.
Oh,
yes.
thank you. I appreciate that.
Ya, ini Joe Vitale sedang diwawancarai tentang bukunya Hypnotic Writing. Jadi buku ini bestseller, ditulis hampir 20 negara kalau tidak salah. Dan sudah diterjemahkan dan buku ini menjadi bestseller untuk para praktisi iklan dan praktisi UKM sekarang karena para UKM banyak menggunakan teknik-teknik copywriting baik di WA maupun di Instagram dan sebagainya menggunakan teknik-teknik hypnotic writing yang dikembangkan oleh Joe Vitale.
So let's start with copywriting. Let's start with your journey. I know you've done a lot of things in your career. In time. Let's start with how you started in the world of copywriting.
Well, I wanted to be an author since I was about 16 years old. I knew that I wanted to write books, I wanted to write plays, I wanted to write novels, I wanted to write fiction, but I didn't know anything about copywriting. In my pursuit of trying to be a full-time author, there was a lot of struggle. I was homeless for a while. I was in poverty for a while, but I kept reading, I kept working on myself, I kept studying the art of writing, and along the way, I came across the word copywriting.
Ini jadi Joe Vitale sebenarnya keinginannya itu menjadi penulis ya, penulis iklan, penulis film, penulis apapun gitu. Pokoknya dia sulit. Tapi dalam perjalanannya kan penuh perjuangannya untuk pelajari teknik-teknik ini ya gitu. Dan dia bahkan pernah menjadi homeless, tidak punya rumah gitu. Tapi dia terus belajar. Sehingga ketika dia ingin belajar menjadi penulis, dia menemukan satu kata yang disebut dengan copywriting.
And I remember thinking, what's that? I didn't know. And I learned about copywriting. I immediately got excited because A, here was a way to make money from writing, and B, there was a certain thrill in learning how to write a sales letter that would make a complete stranger send me money for something they hadn't seen yet.
Nah, jadi Joe terus belajar tentang apa itu copywriting. Dan karena dia suka nulis, maka dia copywriting menjadi hal yang baru bagi dia gitu. Karena ini adalah kerjaan tantangan ya, menulis sebuah tulisan yang menarik bagi orang. Dan salah satu yang menarik adalah kalau dia menulis copywriting, rata-rata kan copywriting untuk penjualan ya. Jadi bagaimana orang bisa tertarik tulisan walaupun sebenarnya barangnya dia belum lihat gitu. Dan ini adalah sebuah tulisan yang harusnya cerdas ya, sehingga membuat orang bisa membayangkan apa yang terjadi pada dia ketika dia bisa membeli barang atau terpengaruh oleh tulisan kita.
And so I got very captivated, and I started learning about copywriting, and there were some early books like How to Make Money as a Copywriter or Secrets of a Freelance Writer, things like that. So I evolved into it in my desperate search to learn how to make a living as a writer. Copywriter was my door that opened up to let me in to start making a little money from that.
Ya, jadi Joe Vitale sebenarnya struggle ya untuk bisa jadi penulis gitu. Dan copywriting bagi Joe Vitale adalah pintu untuk menjadi sukses, terutama untuk mencari uang. Nah, pada saat itu dia lagi belum tahu idenya bagaimana mencari uang yang efektif ya gitu.
Aspect.
Amazing. So I suppose it's that the art of persuasion was something that really interested you, that really gripped you.
I'm going to tell you, I still remember the moment where I had written a sales letter for a software program. This is way back in the late 80s, early 90s, and the software program was an old DOS program to tell you how dated it was. And we didn't have effective use of the internet. So I wrote a direct mail sales letter. I really worked on it. I really crafted it because I was excited, sincerely excited about the software, which was kind of a pseudo and artificial intelligence program to help people write and speak. And so I rented a small mailing list. I barely had any money at all. I think I even borrowed the money, rented a list.
Nah, dia pertama kali proyeknya adalah menulis surat penjualan. Jadi proyeknya dia tuh di copywriting di sana adalah ini orang punya produk, kemudian bantuin dong buat surat copywriting, dan dia dibayar untuk itu gitu. Dan salah satu produk pertamanya adalah menjual produk software yang tahun 90-an, 80-90-an yang masih berupa DOS ya, semua perusahaan DOS yang komputernya masih besar-besar. Dan bagi dia itu sebuah pengalaman luar biasa karena dulu komputer itu masih baru ya. Jadi menulisnya butuh pemahaman banyak tentang komputer, tentang DOS dan lain sebagainya gitu.
Wrote the sales letter, sent it out, and I went to my post office box a few days later, and I still remember turning the key, opening it up, and there were envelopes. And I started opening the envelopes, and there were checks. And I went, oh my God, this is the holy grail. This is the combination lock to the riches I had been seeking. And it was the art of copywriting. That's what was making it work. So yeah, I got excited.
Ya, Joe cerita ketika pertama kali dapat cek ya, dikirimin cek dari hasil jasa copywriting. Dari situlah kemudian dia paham bahwa copywriting bisa salah satu menjadi profesinya beliau saat itu.
Sounds like a magical moment that time when you.
I remember that moment right now.
Awesome. And what would you say are the biggest barriers for newbies? Obviously, we've got a community of a lot of some of our writers have done a bit of copywriting before. A lot of them are brand new, complete newbies. What do you think are the biggest barriers to succeeding as a copywriter?
Well, the biggest one is thinking they know what it's all about. It's the assumption of skill. It's not there. Copywriting is amazingly difficult. It's very, very challenging because you have psychology, you have persuasion, you have the craft of writing, and probably some other dark elements that are woven into this. And it's really easy for people to assume, oh, I know how to write. So I'm just
Yeah.
going to be a copywriter. And it's that ego that gets in the way. So the biggest issue here is not really respecting the craft. There's an art and science to copywriting. And if people don't take the time to learn it, I'm still learning. I'm 67 years old. I'm still learning. I'm still reading. I'm still diving in to unravel any hacks, any shortcuts, any new insights, any psychology I might have missed or maybe can still use. So the beginners really need to respect the craft and then really start learning it.
Ya, yang jadi tantangan di dalam copywriting adalah orang menganggap sepele tindakan copywriting ya. Karena dianggap baru bisa nulis dikit, dianggap saya bisa nulis gitu. Padahal sebenarnya copywriting itu perpaduan dari pertama psychology, yang kedua people sebenarnya. Jadi mengenali psikologi, mengenali bagaimana melakukan persuasi pada orang, dan ketiga bagaimana menulis untuk memastikan menggunakan kedua psikologi dan persuasif untuk membuat orang tertarik pada apa yang kita tulis. Perpaduan ini yang sering orang males melakukan kombinasi secara efektif gitu.
Putting in the 10,000 hours or more, whatever it takes to master copywriting.
Yeah, you know what? I feel that marketers, so many marketers out there don't respect it, or just people in business in general.
Right.
It's still this one part of the marketing kind of puzzle that, because people can write, they have the ability to write English, for example, they think, oh, I'll do that. And we still speak to so many marketing managers that they decide, oh, I'm doing the copy. Not really, they'll get a designer, they'll get a developer, but for some reason they try to take that on and they don't respect the art and the science of it all.
Ya, jadi ini menjelaskan tentang bagaimana orang memperlakukan copywriting. Orang meng-hire desainer, orang meng-hire kontraktor dan sebagainya, tapi jarang orang meng-hire copywriting gitu. Awal-awalnya begitu di Amerika, karena merasa bahwa itu tindakan yang sederhana gitu. Padahal sebenarnya ini tindakan yang butuh pemahaman lebih dalam, butuh pengkayaan terhadap begitu banyak perkataan vocabulary yang ada di dalam diri kita.
I remind people that copywriting is a stranger writing to a stranger to ask them to pay for something in advance, usually for a product or service they don't even know is going to work for them. It is one of the most challenging things ever. So I say you really have to respect it. And if somebody is really on an ego kick and think there's nothing to it, I would say, go ahead and try.
Yeah.
Go ahead and write some sales letters, send them out, and then give me back the feedback on how you did.
Yes.
Nah, itu kembali orang butuh latihan ya. Jadi kalau ke Joe Vitale itu suka tuh. Joe Vitale saya lihat di dalam beberapa bukunya, dia sering mengetes para penulis-penulis copywriting muda untuk ngirim ke dia, kemudian dia nilai, kemudian dibalikin lagi. Dan inilah cara Joe Vitale melatih para copywriter muda ya gitu.
See if those checks turn up at your
Right.
doorstep.
Right.
Can I ask you a question on that note? Do you think that newbies that want to master copywriting who don't have the natural knack for writing, do you think they can master? Do you think you need to have that natural ability and then to really hone it? Do you think it's possible to people to learn even though they're not great writers?
That's a great question. I absolutely believe you can learn it. Absolutely believe it. None of us are born writing.
Ya, jadi menurut Joe Vitale salah satu juga coba kirim ke bagian iklan, kemudian buatlah iklan, tunggu cek ada cek apa enggak gitu, satu. Yang kedua, copywriting adalah teknik ya. Jadi semua bisa dipelajari karena tidak, dan ini bukan teknik dari lahir lah. Ini sebuah technical skill yang harusnya bisa dipelajari oleh banyak orang bila mau belajar tentunya ya. Gitu.
You're learning how to write from day one, whenever the first grades are in the US or in London or anywhere in the world. Whenever they start teaching people the alphabet, teaching people how to string together words, we're all learning how to write. Yeah. Learning how to copyright is an extension of all of that. There is much more to it, but it's like saying I went to grade school and I learned how to do cursor. I could write in pencil and write my name. Then I went to junior high and I learned how to write a short story. Or I went to high school or college and I learned how to write a dissertation. Well, the next step is, okay, go to copywriting school now and learn how to write with a sales goal in mind. I believe you can learn that. And there's little shortcuts and hacks. And maybe we can talk about a couple of them as we go through here. But I believe we can all learn it.
Definitely, yeah. No, really, really good point. And the shortcuts and hacks we will definitely get to, as I think our community would love to get those nuggets from you.
Right.
Any other advice for those starting out? We've kind of talked about the main barrier. Any other kind of and from a seasoned expert thinking back to when you started, is there anything you would say?
Absolutely. God, I can get on a soapbox because I love copywriting so much, and I know what I went through to get to whatever level I'm at this point, and I'm still growing. I would say the number one, if not number two thing is read every frickin' book ever written on copywriting. I don't care if it was in the 1800s. You find those books and you work your way through those books. Read the classics, and I have a handful of books I recommend. Some people should have heard of if they're interested in copywriting, and some they probably never heard of. But I am a book freak. I'm a book addict. When it comes to learning something, I go back to when it started.
Ya, Joe menyarankan kita sering membaca buku-buku. Buku apapun tentang copywriting ya, karena setiap buku itu memberikan wacana baru. Bahkan Joe Vitale termasuk orang yang suka meneliti buku-buku lama dari tahun 1900. Ada banyak buku-buku Joe Vitale, salah satu Seven Lost Secret ya. Itu buku-buku beliau yang menjelaskan bagaimana para penulis copywriting di zaman dulu membuat tulisan di dalam berbagai macam bentuk. Dulu tidak seperti sekarang ya, dengan internet dan sebagainya kita bisa memodel. Dulu tuh lebih original ya tulisan itu, dan orang menulis di berbagai macam, baik flyer mau apapun, dan harus catching up. Jadi begitu di sounding, dilempar tuh harus menarik orang, kalau nggak akan dibuang kertasnya. Nah, kalau sekarang kan kita menulis di komputer ya gitu. Di komputer kan orang tinggal bisa skip dan sebagainya gitu. Jadi sekarang kan orang bisa mengcopy dari orang kemudian dirubah. Kalau dulu kan nggak bisa, dulu tidak ada komputer. Jadi orang harus mendesain tulisannya benar-benar original dari otaknya gitu. Maka Joe Vitale termasuk penggemar buku-buku lama yang terbit dari tahun 1900 maupun 1920-an ya. Para pakar-pakar iklan terdahulu ya.
I have books from the 1800s, the early 1900s. Of course, the new books that are coming out, I still grab them. I still devour them. I don't think anybody that wants to be a great copywriter can actually succeed unless they have learned from the historic greats. And most of those historic greats wrote books. And a lot of their thinking about copywriting is there. But I would also look at psychology. There is a psychology to selling. And I wouldn't just look at books on selling or the psychology of selling. I would look at actual psychology to understand how the mind works. I'm still learning about writing, and I still love learning about writing because to me it's so fascinating that we only have the 26 letters in the alphabet, depending on what language we have here. But depending on how I weave those words together, I can make somebody cry. I can make somebody laugh. I can make somebody buy. And it's like, how do you do that? That is an art and a science to writing that I think I'm still learning, and I think everybody that's interested in copywriting needs to learn.
Ya, jadi kembali copywriting itu tentang seni gitu. Jadi ada skill, ada seni ya gitu. Karena kembali kata-kata itu abjad itu hanya 26 ya, 26 atau 27 kalau dalam bahasa kita ya, dalam bahasa Inggris, bahasa kita gitu. Dan itu bagaimana kita merangkainya sehingga orang bisa menangis, bisa tersenyum, bisa terjual produk kita melalui tulisan kita gitu. Jadi membuat tulisan kita sebagai sebuah instrumen untuk mengotak-ngatik ke mental seorang gitu.
So read. Anybody who wants to write needs to be reading anyway. It's going to train their mind how to think like a writer. You're going to pick up unconsciously some patterns, some flow, some unthought about things will be taken in on a subtle level, and it'll become part of who they are. But the big one for me is read. You cannot, if a person comes to me and says they're a copywriter and I ask what books they read and they read one or two, they're out the door. I'm not going to hire that person. They don't know anything about copywriting.
Nah, ini juga Joe Vitale kalau meng-hire orang dilihat bacaan yang dibaca apa. Kalau bacanya sedikit malah dia nggak akan pakai gitu. Karena seorang copywriter adalah penulis, tapi seorang penulis juga harus pembaca juga. Orang yang suka membaca biasanya sangat bagus dalam menulis gitu. Tapi orang yang sedikit membaca biasanya sedikit wawasan dalam menulis sesuatu termasuk copywriting.
I think it's interesting that, you know, obviously our community, we've launched a course, and a course Kickstarter course bundle, and there's a lot of text, right? We've got some intro videos, but it's a lot of text, and then we've had a couple of people sort of wanting to opt out essentially because they said, oh, I thought it was going to be a bunch of videos. I tried to explain, well, you know, I didn't want to have to read, you know, and we sort of thought, you don't want to have to read, but you want to be able to become a copywriter. You're going to have to. The way that it's written, and anyone that spent time in the course who were expecting videos suddenly realized, oh, this is actually nice to read. I'm enjoying this. This is going in, and you're learning through kind of osmosis as well as learning through the tips that are written there. You know, if it's written in that style, you can pick up as you flow and.
Well, you know, Conrad, there's something I think that's interesting that's worth mentioning here. I don't know if people know my reputation, but, you know, I was in the movie The Secret. I've written 80 some books. I travel around the world as a speaker. I've been to countries I didn't even know existed long ago. I've been on television, major media, Larry King and a bunch of other ones. Interviewed all the time, not always on copywriting, rarely on copywriting, but on lots of other subjects. And here's why I'm bringing all this up. Copywriting has been my secret to success. Copywriting. It's the ability to use words with some sort of conscious control that I've applied to being in movies, to being on stage, to being interviewed, as well as in my books. People can pick up any of my books, and again, I've written dozens of them, and they'll see that they were written by a copywriter because the copywriting method has given me a way to grab attention, hold attention, and usually compel people to do something, if only to think in a different way. So when people say they don't want to watch videos, I'm thinking to myself, do you realize those are words?
Nah, jadi kembali, misalnya cerita bahwa copywriting adalah secret rahasianya dia membuat sukses gitu. Dan dia juga jadi pembicara, jadi dipanggil dengan berbagai macam orang, juga mewawancarai orang, juga melihat banyak film, juga membuat banyak film beberapa ya. Dia membaca buku banyak dan membuat buku banyak. Jadi dengan kata lain bahwa bila Anda seorang copywriter, tapi kita tidak suka membaca, tidak suka nonton film, maka Joe mengatakan, bukankah itu sebuah kata? Dan harusnya kita track bagaimana ada kata yang membuat orang bergerak, ada kata yang tidak membuat orang bergerak. Nah, kata-kata ini harusnya menjadi bagian dari ide kita dalam merancang sebuah tulisan copywriting.
Those are also stemming back to the control of language, which is what copywriting is all about. So anybody that is unsubscribing because they don't want to watch videos should unsubscribe. Get the hell out of the copywriting school. You don't belong there. Go watch YouTube or something, you know?
I'm glad you're on our side.
Oh, come on, absolutely.
Oke, jadi Joe Vitale kembali menegaskan bahwa belajar dari pengalaman, belajar dari buku, dan belajar dari film. Film-film yang ada itu adalah film-film untuk kita bisa memberikan wacana atau pengetahuan pada kita apa yang harus kita tulis di dalam copywriting. Kalau kita jarang lihat kegiatan itu, maka sebenarnya kita tidak punya data yang cukup untuk menulis copywriting.
So I think that was perhaps a nice segue to my next question, which is about the book that I mentioned, Hypnotic Writing, which was a book I read first 10 years ago and loved, and I learned a lot of skills from that very book. What is hypnotic writing? So, what's it all about?
Yeah, thank you.
You coined the term yourself, right? It's your term. So what is it?
Yeah, I coined the term. I coined it because I was reading in two different areas. I was reading literature, which I don't read that much anymore these days, but I was reading fiction. And I would read these stories and I would wonder, how is the author making me feel so much? I'm just reading a fictional story about some character going through some challenge, and yet my breathing might get shallow because I'm excited, or I might raise my shoulders because I'm getting tense, or I might laugh, or I might cry, or I might chuckle, or who knows. But it's all happening because this author pulled my strings. And I thought, how did the author do that in literature?
Ya, jadi ini ditanya tentang bukunya dia tentang hypnotic copywriting, hypnotic writing. Sebenarnya apa itu? Nah, idenya dia bermula ketika dia suka membaca buku-buku majalah fiksi ya gitu. Dan menarik gitu karena dari tulisan itu Joe bisa merasa tenang, bisa merasa gembira, bisa merasa tegang dan apapun itu hanya dari tulisan yang ditulis oleh si penulis gitu. Dan maka menurut dia menjadi sebuah magic gitu. Bagaimana tulisan kita orang bisa mengontrol mental kita sedalam itu gitu.
So I was fascinated with that. And then on the other side, I've been a hypnotist since I was about 18 years old. So I've got decades of experience in that. Certified hypnotist, spoke at the hypnosis conventions, no hypnotist, practice hypnosis and so forth. And I was fascinated with the aspect of grabbing attention and holding it and influencing it, which is what hypnosis helps do. And there's something in hypnosis called the waking trance. Most people have heard about trances. You know, you close your eyes and you come back to 10 or whatever the hypnotist did, or you saw a stage hypnotist do something along those lines. But a waking hypnotic state is where your eyes are open, but you're in a trance. And that often happens, most people would identify when they're driving and they've been lost in thought, maybe it's late at night, and they just keep driving, and they're in highway hypnosis.
Yeah.
They're in a waking trance. Obviously, their eyes are open because they got to steer the car, but they're steering unconsciously. And it was the fascination with both those areas. How does a literary great pull our emotional buttons or push our emotional buttons? And how do hypnotists get us to listen, stay focused, and act? And I put both of those together. And combined them and called them hypnotic writing. And way back in Houston in the mid-1990s, I was teaching hypnotic writing classes for adults. It was an experiment. There were adult education classes back then, and for $30, somebody could take a class that lasted one night or a few weeks. I don't remember how long hypnotic writing lasted as a class. But I created a manual because I had also heard that I could make money selling books in the back of the room. I needed a book. So I wrote hypnotic writing. I tested hypnotic writing to that group. I bound it and sold it to those people in the back. Hypnotic writing also ended up being my very first ebook. Way back decades ago in the late 1990s, Mark Joyner, who was virtually unknown at the time, kept telling me about ebooks, and he says, Joe, I'm a fan of yours, I believe in you, give me anything and I will promote it as an ebook. I said,
Ya, George bercerita bahwa dia belajar hipnosis sejak umur 18 tahun dan dia tadi tertarik dengan bagaimana menulis bisa mempengaruhi kondisi mental orang, dan dia menggabungkan keduanya ke dalam konteks namanya hypnotic writing, dan sudah dicoba di beberapa kelas sebelumnya di tahun 99 ya, 98, 99, dan cukup berhasil. Maka kemudian dia menuliskan kajiannya tentang hypnotic writing.
no, 2 years. Because nobody knew what ebooks were, and I thought, who's going to buy an ebook?
Yeah.
Well, when I finally gave it to him and he sold it, it broke records overnight. And I realized that I was on to something, that people really wanted this new way of looking at copywriting. So in short, a hypnotic writer, which is what I would call myself, is basically using a lot of story technique, because in fiction and in literature, there's stories. You're reading it because there's a story that's unfolding that you are engaged with. So that aspect of hypnotic writing is there. But there's also the aspect of holding attention, which comes from traditional copywriting. If you don't grab attention and hold attention, nobody's going to listen to your argument and you're not going to make any sales. So the combination of hypnotic writing is what that's all about. Fiction plus hypnosis plus a little self-psychology equals hypnotic writing.
Awesome. I'm probably going to jump ahead to a question I was planning for later, but that's how my works. I talk about balance because you talked about a few different elements there. And the thing that we found with some of our new learners, for example, is that they pick up a few tricks. You know, you copyright sales psychology tricks, for example. And one thing I've noticed is them going overboard, right? And they sound like a car salesman. You know, it's like, oh, here's a trick. Here's that sense of urgency. Let's throw that in. And, you know, it's kind of all coupled together. And then the end formula there is especially these days when you're, you know, there's people are hit with more and more and more ads from all kinds of different medium, all kinds of different angles. So that I suppose they're more immune to that sort of messaging. How would you recommend getting that balance right of these different techniques?
Ya, hypnotic writing yang dikembangkan oleh Joe Vitale adalah basisnya cerita. Kenapa cerita ya? Karena kita hanyut dalam cerita. Di dalam cerita ada permainan-permainan mental ya di dalam cerita, dan hypnotic writing memainkan itu. Memainkan cerita agar proses cerita ini berkembang ke dalam pikiran pembaca sehingga menghasilkan cerita dan mengarah pada kondisi atau konteks yang kita inginkan dari cerita tersebut gitu. Dan ini menjadi menarik gitu, karena kembali semua ini hanya bisa terjadi bila kita juga punya data, punya pembenaran kata, dan pembenaran kata sumbernya dari apa yang kita lihat, apa yang kita dengar, apa yang kita rasakan, dan apa yang kita baca di kehidupan kita sehari-hari maupun buku yang kita baca.
You know, Dan Kennedy, who also deeply influenced me and has written lots of books on marketing and wrote a great book on sales letter. I think it was called The Ultimate Sales Letter. Dan Kennedy is still around, still doing copywriting. And he often said that what you need to focus on is having door-to-door selling. Now, I know today, especially, you know, depending on what's going on in the world, going door-to-door isn't really possible and probably isn't practical. But there is a lesson there that we all need to have. And I got door-to-door selling. I had telephone selling, direct selling, all of that, where you pick up the phone or you knock on somebody's door and you end up talking to them. And when you have that kind of practical experience, you learn you cannot be a car salesman. They will hang up on you. They will slam the door in front of you because you will come across as an insincere clown.
Yeah.
So what I advise people is, first of all, you should only be promoting something you believe in. If you are asked to promote a product or service that you really don't believe works, what the hell are you taking a job for? It's unethical. It's not true to your own life morals and values. I believe that you're going to be a far better copywriter if A, you are writing copy for something you truly believe in.
Yeah.
The story I told about going to the post office and getting those checks for that software program, I love that software program. I used that software program.
Yeah.
So when I said this works, people believed me and I didn't have to go over the top. Going over the top is a sign of being an amateur. It's also a sign that you don't really believe in what you're selling because you're kind of using a megahorn and screaming into somebody's ears to pay attention. It's far wiser to come from what I'm sometimes using the phrase logically emotional. Logically emotional.
Yeah.
We've learned in sales psychology, and most copywriters learn at some time, that people buy for emotional reasons, but they justify with logic. Most of the time they're buying something because they're really excited. Something in their heart is resonating with it. And so they want to buy because they're excited. But then they got to go rationalize it. Maybe they have to tell their wife or their husband or their accountant, here's why I spent the money on this. And so they need logical reasons. That balance of both, being logically emotional in a sales letter, is what will help people be more level-headed. I think really screaming, going over the top, is showing you don't know your material, you don't know how to sell your material, you haven't actually shown that you believe in your material, because when you have that sincerity and you have that skill, there's a certain natural quality that will be in your copy.
Ya, jadi Joe Vitale menjelaskan tentang konsep hypnotic selling ya. Dan dia terpengaruh dari tulisan namanya Dan Kennedy. Dan Kennedy adalah orang sales ya, sales marketing juga. Dia mengajarkan orang kalau membuat tulisan, walaupun tulisannya di dalam tulisan, tapi bagusnya punya practical experience ya. Jadi kita tahu bagaimana berhadapan dengan orang, bagaimana melakukan direct selling dan sebagainya. Mungkin sekarang sudah jarang dilakukan oleh orang. Tapi dulu adalah ini dilakukan dan kita mendapatkan experience gitu. Apa yang boleh dan tidak dan apa yang orang rasakan apa tidak. Disitulah menjadi bahan penulisan kita. Jadi kalau kita menulis sesuatu tapi kita ragu, itu menunjukkan kita tidak benar-benar menyukai produknya. Jadi menurut Joe Vitale, kalau kita ada seorang konsultan copywriter gitu, kita diminta untuk membuat tulisan, pastikan kita menyukai konsepnya. Maka pelajari dalam konsepnya. Pelajari apa yang terjadi di dalam, pelajari positioningnya, pelajari apa ide mengapa produk ini dituliskan. Karena dengan cara ini kita jadi benar-benar sincere, tulus. Oh, kita menunjukkan produk yang kita benar-benar sangat yakin ini produk bagus. Gitu. Kan sering sekali orang menulis hanya dapat order kemudian menuliskan produk tanpa pernah membayangkan bagaimana sih orang yang membeli produk ini, apa perasaannya, apa kepuasannya, atau apa kerugiannya kalau dia tidak suka gitu. Nah, disinilah kita harus menulis secara tulus ya tentang apa yang kita tulis agar kita terjadi sebuah ketulusan. Karena dengan ketulusan itu kita punya natural feeling yang bisa mengalir ke dalam tulisan kita gitu. Tapi kalau kita merasa tidak suka dengan produknya, kita kalau tawarin pun belum tentu beli, maka kita agak sulit menulis surat penjualan secara efektif gitu.
Guide your copy and the reader will pick up on it. They will pick up on sincerity. So that's a lot of material. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, that's really, really good. I've got a couple of points off the back of that. I think that there's this little exercise that we actually have asked our new learners to do really early on, before they've even learned.
Ya, jadi Joe menjelaskan kalau kita tulus, maka si pembaca akan cepat menangkap apa yang kita inginkan karena berasal dari ketulusan kita di dalam menulis.
Any of the kind of copywriting formulas and tricks and tips that we offer them, and it's just write to a friend. Try and tell a friend about this thing you've just bought, and this is the thing. We noticed that some of our learners were jumping the gun, and they'd obviously heard about some copyright tricks and tried to make it a sales letter, and we had to say, hold up, we didn't ask you to do that. We said, you just think of the last thing that you bought that you really like and tell your friend about it, because we naturally do that. That's a normal, natural scenario. Right. Sending a message out, oh, hey, mate, you know, you never guess what, you really love this. You know, there's things that we naturally do in life that we've picked up as social creatures, and try and bring that element in. I think it's a good exercise to do, to try and get the sales psychology out of your head, you know, use that and then structure it and then, you know, sprinkle the magic in.
And I love that exercise and I endorse it and I've done it. And I'll give you an add-on to it. Another way of doing it is to actually pick up the phone and call a friend of yours and tell them about the product or service, or it could be the latest movie you saw or the latest book you read, or it could be about this interview, and record it. Transcribe the recording. You can go to rev.com, rev.com, and I think they're $1.25 a minute. So depending on how long your call was, it could be $10, $10 US dollars or something or less. And because what happens, and this is a technique I learned from Gary Halbert, who was another influence in copywriting, and he's gone now, but he influenced a lot of people who wanted to be copywriting geniuses, and he wrote quite a few little books that have helped people. I believe they're all on Amazon. I believe they're still worth reading. And he would say, call up somebody and tell them about what you're trying to sell and record what you're doing, because in your natural speech for something you love, which could be a movie, could be the book, could be the product, you will inadvertently, unconsciously practice some pretty good copywriting.
Yeah.
If you transcribe it, then you can review it to learn where you naturally said a few things that were pretty cool. Like, for example, you and I didn't talk before this interview. I had a sense of where we were going to go, and I knew what the topic was. When you asked me early on about where I got started with copywriting, I did not know I was going to tell the story about writing that sales letter for the writing copy and going to the post office and turning the key, but that ended up being pretty good.
That's
And if I
perfect, yeah.
Yes, but it happened naturally. And that's my point. It happened naturally out of my own sincerity. It's not a made up story. That's from my life. And I'm obviously enthusiastic about it. And it came out of a conversation with you. So if at some point we transcribe this, we can pull that story out and use it to maybe sell this particular interview.
Ya, kembali. Copywriting adalah disebut copywriting sebenarnya sejarah dulu. Copywriter mengcopy ide di dalam diri kita dalam konteks penjualan. Jadi sebenarnya gitu, diekspresikan dalam tulisan. Nah, Joe suka melakukan latihan, kita juga perlu lakukan itu kalau sebagai copywriter, yaitu ceritakan hal bagus tentang sebuah film atau apapun pada teman kita dan lihat responnya terhadap cerita kita. Apakah dia tertarik, apakah dia boring, apakah dia exciting, merasa terdorong, mentalnya terbawa dalam cerita itu, atau justru malah biasa-biasa aja. Dari situlah sebenarnya kita belajar apakah kita bisa lakukan copywriting dengan bagus atau tidak. Cara kita memilih kata, cara kita berucap, cara kita exciting terasa di teman kita. Itu yang disebut dengan sincere, tulus ya. Jadi kalau kita suka cerita itu, maka cara kita menceritakan cerita itu membuat orang juga lebih suka, membuat orang juga suka karena energi kita terasa di orang tersebut gitu.
Yeah.
So I'm saying I love what you're talking about there, and calling a friend, talking to a friend, recording the call is another way to learn good copy.
You know what, Joe? I actually, I remember first reading about the self-editor in your book. Trying to avoid that. I have to transcribe. I can't do it. Like I have to talk because I could never. Because I'm kind of a perfectionist and I can't help just jumping back to the beginning of the sentence. If I'll always do it. I'll be like, if I pause for a second, I go, let me read.
And you just completely froze.
And it stifles the process.
You are froze, Conrad. I don't know if you were.
Oh, yeah. Have you got?
You're back. You're back. You're back.
All right. So yeah,
it's real, folks.
You froze for me and I froze for you, but I think we're good.
Okay, well, good. That's you know what freezing does? Freezing grabs attention and holds it. I would leave it in this interview because when people are reading, they're going to come to the frozen part and they're going to wonder, what are they saying? They're going to lean forward. Is it going to come back? Are they okay? Is Dr. Joe coming back? Is Conrad coming back? And then we can explain that there is, for example, on stage, a pause is one of the most hypnotic things you can do. Because you're talking and everybody's listening to you, but all of a sudden you go,
yeah.
And they all lean forward. It's like, what happened? What's he going to say? So you can do that in copy with a variety of techniques, but I would leave it as an example.
I love how you're selling the tech problem that we had.
Well, it's turning it into something good. I have a self-help side and I wrote books like The Attractor Factor where I say when something's going on in your life that's not particularly great, turn it into something good.
Yeah.
Copywriters should be pretty creative people. So I'm saying, hey, the screen froze. Let's turn it into something good. It was a good thing that it froze.
I think it's a great point. Like I did a webinar this week. We've been doing a bit of work on communicating in a crisis because of the current situation. The webinar with one of the banks over here with their audience, and I talked about admitting weakness. There are all these companies right now. Everyone's suffering. Be honest about it. Tell your community, tell your followers, we're struggling with this, and it turns the negative into a positive. Don't say we're on top of everything. We're not affected. We know how to solve coronavirus, because you don't. It comes across as ingenuine, and it breaks trust rather than builds it.
That is a fantastic point. It's actually one of the things I would teach people that want to learn copywriting.
Jadi, ini menarik nih. Di dalam komunikasi terjadi sebuah kesalahan teknologi ya, atau mereka freeze gitu, baik di Joe maupun di penginterviewnya. Dan Joe bercerita ini justru momen bagus. Jadi di dalam, kalau kita bicara di dalam metode hypnotic communication, Ketika kita lancar, tentu kita break, pause. Orang akan menanti next sentence-nya, kalimat berikutnya. Karena kalimat berikutnya adalah sebuah, karena tadi proses TDS ya, proses searching. Ada apa sih sebenarnya di balik itu, di balik diamnya dia. Dan orang menanti kalimat-kalimat berikutnya kan gitu. Nah sebenarnya di dalam teknik hipnotik juga ada gitu. Kita membuat sesuatu yang penasaran, kemudian brek, atau kita seperti di tulisan kita seperti titik-titik gitu. Dan itu memancing orang, paus seperti paus di dalam kehidupan sehari-hari gitu. Dan kalimat berikutnya dinanti orang dan itu memancing rasa penasaran, memancing rasa transderivational shirt gitu. TDS yang tadi kita telah sebutkan sebelumnya.
Is to be totally sincere, which seems to be a reoccurring theme in this interview here. I keep talking about that because when we talk to somebody about something we are selling them, in a sense, we don't even think we're selling them. We're just saying, hey, I saw a great movie the other day. I'll give you an example. I saw the movie Molly's Game. And Molly's Game is a true story about a woman who ran an illegal poker gambling game. And I didn't know anything about the movie, started watching it. It was absolutely riveting. True story, well done, engaging, fantastic dialogue. And so as I'm telling you this, I am selling you on the movie, but I'm not doing it with that conscious intent. That's my enthusiasm. It's like, man, I saw a great movie. But here's the thing. Even when we do that, we always find something to bitch about. Meaning, I saw the movie Molly's Game, and you know what? They talk too fast. That was my only complaint about this movie. Kevin Costner's in it, and he kind of mumbles a little bit. I didn't like that. But for the most part, man, that movie was great. I'd watch it again, and maybe I need to watch it again because they frickin' talk too fast in certain parts of the movie. So what did I just do? I showed my enthusiasm. I talked about the movie, which is I'm selling, and I admitted a weakness that I saw in it. We do this for everything.
Ya, ini menarik sebenarnya. Jadi awal diskusi ini mengenai ketulusan ya. Ada sebuah bank atau sebuah si penginterview bercerita tentang ada sebuah bank. Jadi dia akan melakukan webinar dan bank itu awalnya ragu mengakui bahwa ada banyak beberapa karyawan yang kena COVID. Wah ini masih COVID ya gitu. Jadi nggak bisa masuk gitu. Sebenarnya yang bagus ketika katakan terus terang. Karena dengan katakan terus terang itu orang menghormati ketulusan ya gitu. Ketulusan orang dibanding kita mengatakan kita bank yang berkuasa digdaya ya berdaya maupun COVID kita tetap melayani orang dan sebagainya. Justru dengan sincere inilah kita tulusan ini kita jadi lebih terapresiasi. Nah, Joe bercerita tentang contoh ya, dia ada sebuah film gitu. Ada sebuah film bagus dan dia menceritakan dengan penuh antusias, kata Joe. Ini secara tidak langsung sebenarnya saya sedang menjual film tersebut pada Anda ya, gitu terus. Dan kemudian dicelah, tapi sayang film itu punya kelemahannya ini. Namun di lain kesempatan, di lain kelemahan itu ada film ini film bagus dan sebagainya dan mungkin saya harus nonton lagi karena ini sebuah film bagus, hanya bagian-bagian yang kecil ini yang saya mau telusuri apa karena mereka ngomong begitu cepat gitu. Nah, seorang copywriter ada seorang yang sangat kreatif bisa mengkonversi tantangan hambatan menjadi sebuah keuntungan gitu. Kayak tadi tentang pause dan sebagainya. Jadi seorang copywriter ketika ada tantangan justru dia bisa mengubah tantangan itu menjadi sebuah keuntungan bagi perusahaan itu. Dan ini harusnya menjadi trik seorang copywriter dalam membuat tulisan.
If we go to a great restaurant, we'll say something like, oh, they had the best Persian food ever. However, I couldn't understand the menu because it was in Farsi and I'd have to look at the picture and try to figure out what the item was. But once I ordered it, it was fantastic. We do this with everything. So when we write our copy, we want to make sure we insert our weakness. I actually did that with the software program from the 1990s. I said, this is an incredible program. This program will help you be a better writer and better speaker, blah, 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 blah. The only problem is it only works on a PC.
Nah, ini juga kembali, Joe menceritakan bagaimana kalau ada sebuah produk yang lemah, tapi di cover dengan begitu banyak keuntungan. Gitu. Sehingga jadi terlihat keuntungan. Dan kita terlihat jujur gitu. Karena Tidak ada produk yang hebat 100% ya. Selalu ada produk yang hebat, tapi selalu ada hal-hal yang tidak bisa di cover gitu. Dan Joe cerita ketika dia misalnya kita tadi cerita film, Joe cerita waktu dia jual software yang tahun 90 yang masih DOS itu, dia bilang ini bagus, produk ini bagus, di kualitas bagus, pembicara bagus, sebagainya. Hanya ada satu tantangan, dia hanya bisa diputar di PC. Namun di balik itu ada sebuah hal bermanfaat yang bisa Anda gunakan. Jadi kelihatan tulus, tapi ada keuntungan yang besar yang di cover. Jadi si pembaca menganggap kita tulus karena kita mengakui kelemahan. Di saat yang sama kita menceritakan begitu banyak keunggulan gitu. Dan orang membaca antusias kita di dalam tulisan.
There was a weakness. Don't be afraid to admit the weakness in copy.
Yeah, it's such a great point, and I think a good segue to focus on, let's say, a few more. Admitting a weakness is a trick. Let's say that you can.
Yes.
I don't know if calling it a trick is the right word, but it's a technique you can use.
Yes.
Create hypnotic copy, to create copy that sells, copy that persuades. What other? And I know I've asked you this before when we talked about hypnotic blogging in the past, but when it comes to, let's say, a sales letter or a landing page, that piece of copy that you need to persuade someone, if you had to choose your top 5 hypnotic copywriting techniques, what would they be?
well, hands down, the headline. That headline, it's the make it or break it point. If that headline doesn't grab people, hold people, compel people, interest people, and get them interested in the next sentence, you failed.
Yeah.
So the headline is the most important thing. And just because I say headline, I don't want beginner copywriters to go, well, I put a headline there. It's not just words. It is the intelligent structure of those words that needs to compel people to want to know more. So one of my favorite techniques is to ask a question, but not a yes/no question, because if I said, I don't know, do you believe it's going to rain today? And they say yes or no, there's no reason to keep reading.
Yeah.
They answered yes or no, and they're done. I like an open-ended question that would engage them. In other words, one of the most famous headlines in history is, do you make these mistakes in English? And there were the list of mistakes. Well, that the headline led people right into the beginning of the ad. And then the ad, of course, it needs to take them to a sense of action. So I like, first, you need to have a headline. Second, I like to have a question headline. Third, I like the question to be open-ended. Yes, no, stops the flow.
Yeah.
Little trick I do is I often will put quotation marks around the headline, because quotation marks signify there's some sort of life, there's some sort of dialogue, and you can get 10, 15% or even more readership from doing that. That would be the first thing I would say. Now, that's all about just the headline.
Yeah.
The next thing I would say, right. The next thing I would say is tell a story. Tell a story. Some of the greatest copywriters in history all focused on stories. One of the copywriters that most influenced me was Robert Collier. He wrote the Robert Collier letter book, and most people don't know that he was a metaphysical author. In my life, when I was in my teenage years, I was reading his metaphysical books, and it wasn't until 20 years later that I found out he wrote the Robert Collier letter book, and he was a direct mail genius. And when I looked at his books, whether they were the metaphysical or the Robert Collier book, he also published a magazine called Mind Incorporated, and I found some old issues and I would read those. I was talking about hypnotic writing. If there was a hypnotic writer before me, it was Robert Collier. And his secret was to tell a story. He would focus on an individual, and the individual had to do something. And there's usually a challenge of some sort that the reader gets engaged in, because you want the reader to identify with whoever is being talked about in the story. So the second element that I would have in here is having a story to engage people. And the third element that I would have in here is proof. Proof. There needs to be those testimonials. Dan Kennedy said, have a preponderance of proof, which is a term taken from attorneys, which just means overwhelm people with the evidence that other people have used it. And it doesn't matter if you put 150 testimonials there, because you don't care if they read them. You care that they see them.
Yeah.
And by seeing the overwhelming evidence, they unconsciously conclude, holy shit, this stuff must actually work. This product or service actually works. The next thing that I would focus on, and I got this from Eugene Schwartz, who wrote Breakthrough Advertising. Eugene Schwartz said, a copywriter is the script writer of your prospect's dreams.
Nice.
Oh, I love that. You're the script writer of your prospect's dreams. Think about what that reader wants, and then paint the picture, probably through a story, of what their life will be like when they have their dream come true. I just love this. Be the script writer of your prospect's dreams.
Oke, si Joe ditanya, apa rahasia membuat hipnotik yang bagus, Pertama, dia cerita headline. Headline itu kembali kalau kita tadi bicara tentang hypnotic writing, dia harus menembus gerbang seleksi atau gerbang seleksi antara pikiran sadar dengan pikiran bawah sadar gitu. Dan ini harus menembus dengan menggunakan TDS ya. Ada orang bilang, oh saya udah buat headline. Nah, bukan tentang headline sebenarnya. Ini tentang kata-kata yang membuat orang penasaran dan mau meneruskan membaca. Dan menurut Joe Vitale, yang favoritnya dia adalah open question. Jadi sebuah pertanyaan terbuka yang bukan yes dan no, tapi membuat orang mau terus menjawab dan menelusuri apa yang dia inginkan, apa yang dia ingin dapatkan. Misalnya iklan terkenal, dan ini terkenal di banyak dan legenda karena perbedaannya 1:8 ya. Jadi ada tulisan, do you make this mistake in English? Do you make-nya M-A-K-I-E-nya pakai S. Jadi kan salah gitu. Dan ini memancing orang penasaran. Ini ada iklan ini memang salah, tapi kok ditulis gitu kan gitu. Dan itu membuat orang penasaran terus menulis apa yang dimaksudnya. Dan kemudian beberapa orang menulis bahasa Inggris seperti ini dan sebagainya. Ini membuat orang penasaran terus membuat si pembaca ingin mengetahui ending dari tulisan ini apa gitu. Kemudian berikutnya ada quotation. Quotation ada sebuah percakapan either dari orang terkenal maupun orang-orang percakapan karena membuat tulisan ini hidup ya. Ada story ya, kembali yang ketiga tentang story. Jadi ada sebuah cerita di balik percakapan ini yang kita ceritakan. Inilah percakapan tentang A, B, C dan sebagainya. Berikutnya tentang proven, jadi testimonial, guarantee. Dan bila Anda punya 150 testimonial, tulisin aja semua. Bagi kita tidak penting apakah si pembaca membacanya, tapi orang ngelihatnya, ada 100 testimonial. Ini membuat orang luar biasa gitu testimoni, karena saking banyaknya sehingga orang mungkin nggak penting dia membaca, tapi orang ngelihat banyak orang sudah memberikan testimoni ya di sini gitu. Dan ini menarik gitu. Dan terakhir adalah bagaimana membuat tulisan. Kita harus menelusuri mimpi dari pembaca apa. Jadi istilahnya tulislah sebagaimana mimpi pembaca kita ingin didapatkan. Tulislah semua hal yang membuat mimpi pembaca kita terwujud di dalam tulisan kita. Dan ini menjadi ide dalam menulis copywriting. Copywriting terhebat adalah ketika ekspektasi pembaca itu terekspresikan di dalam tulisan kita. Dan itu membuat pembaca menyetujui dan tidak mengcounter tulisan kita. Dan dia terus akan mengikuti tulisan kita.
And I don't know, was that number 4? I would say number 5 is some sort of takeaway, which means scarcity. The price is going to change today. You have bonuses you're going to give them today. It's what Jay Abraham always called the ethical bribe. If they act today, you're going to give them stuff. It's an ethical bribe. But you got to take it away. If they don't do it today, they're not going to get the ethical bribe. Life is never going to change for them. The money, the cost of this is going to go up. Some sort of slap. some
Yeah.
sort of
A
little,
sense of urgency and
yeah, that sense of urgency, the sense of scarcity, all of that. So I think those are 5 things. I'm just
perfect. Yeah, a lot.
Ya, terakhir tentang sense of urgency ataupun scarcity ya. Sebuah keterharusan kita melakukan take action. Kalau enggak barang itu langka, barang itu tidak dapat bonus dan sebagainya. Yang J. Abraham adalah seorang konsultan UKM, menyebutnya dengan sogokan etis atau ethical bribe ya. Jadi orang beli hari ini Anda akan dapat ini, dapat ini, dapat ini, dapat ini. Itu sebenarnya disebut dengan ethical bribe atau sogokan etis lah gitu. Jadi take action now, hari ini Anda dapat A, dapat B, dapat C, dapat payung, dapat diskon, apapun itu gitu. Tapi kalau nggak take action ya Anda akan hilang dan sebagainya. Jadi itu 5 hal yang Joe katakan. Pertama headline, kemudian quotation, kemudian storytelling ya, kemudian proven, kemudian tadi scarcity atau ethical bribe ya, sogokan etis ya.
Oh, so that's perfect. Lots of nuggets of gold there in that little section. So on the flip side, what would you say most companies get wrong about, when it comes to their copy? Because we've talked about the fact that lots of marketers decide to take it upon themselves to write the content, to write the copy. I think that I'm not sure what percentage of brands actually use copywriters, but not enough in my book. So, what do you think they get wrong most of the time?
Well, I'm only laughing because it's such an epidemic. It's so easy to say. It's focusing on themselves. It's we copy. Very often their copy is all about them. We started in such and such, and we believe in you, and we got to do blah, blah, blah. It's too we focused. In fact, one great little technique is just go through any copy that has we in it and change it all to you. Trying to change it so you can start thinking about what does the reader get? What does the prospect, the potential customer get? Instead of who am I? Because nobody really cares who you are. They care about what you can do for them. So the big fundamental mistake is coming from the we personality, which means they're coming from their ego. You know, because you read my book, Hypnotic Writing, that one of my famous phrases is, get out of your ego and into your prospect's ego. It's one of the biggest takeaways from this interview even. Get out of your ego. Quit talking about yourself. Quit selling yourself. Quit being focused on yourself. Quit thinking of yourself. Quit dreaming about the money you're going to get from the sales from doing this. Get out of yourself and focus on what do they get? What's in it for them? How will their life be better? How will you solve their problems? How will they sleep better at night? How will they make more money? What is in it for them? Most businesses are crippled on that one. Go ahead.
Can I ask, off the back of that, have you got any tips for trying to get into the mind of the prospect? Because obviously as a copywriter, we have to write copy for all kinds of different brands, selling different services, different audiences. How do we go as one human sitting here, and how do I put my mind into the mind of the prospect?
Oke, tadi si pewawancara mengatakan sesuatu yang menarik, yaitu apa kesalahan orang banyak menulis copywriting gitu. Dan Joe Vitale mengatakan we focus, jadi fokus pada kita sendiri, bukan fokus pada orang lain. Jadi kita menulis kita hebat, kita luar biasa, kita nomor 1, apapun itu sebenarnya. Maka Joe Vitale mengatakan, kalau Anda kebanyakan nulis kita, maka pastikan ganti kata kita dengan kamu atau you gitu menurut dia. Gitu. Karena salah satu kunci dari copywriting adalah keluar dari ego Anda pribadi menuju ego prospek Anda. Keluar Anda menulis bukan untuk diri Anda, tapi menulis untuk orang lain. Pastikan tulisan Anda adalah prospek dream, mimpi prospek. Apa yang membuat prospek itu mau mendengarkan atau mau membaca tulisan kita? Apa manfaat bagi mereka? Apakah mereka lebih bahagia, lebih tidur nyenyak dalam nyenyak dalam tidurnya, lebih punya banyak uang, apapun itu. Apa yang membuat prospek mau terus melanjut mendengarkan kita? Itu ya yang paling penting, bukan dari keinginan kita. Nah, terus kemudian si pewawancara ini melanjutkan. Oke, nah sekarang gimana caranya kalau kita ini konsultan, kita nulis banyak untuk banyak customer, banyak prospek, sementara kita punya brand yang berbeda ya. Jadi kalau kita konsultan punya 20 klien, maka sebenarnya kita punya 20 produk yang berbeda-beda dengan 20 prospek atau customer yang beda-beda. Bagaimana caranya? Nah, sekarang Joe akan menjawab.
That's a great question. Research.
Yeah.
Research. You have to go and look. If you're hired by a company, you have to go and look at their data. You have to find out, have you done surveys? Have you got the demographics on this? Do you know who your ideal customer is? For example, in my world, for my followers, if you will, my mailing list, if you will, we have figured out that the average customer is a woman, single, previously married, 2 kids usually, between the ages of 45 and 60. Though that's my fan base, and which is a cool fan base to have. They have money, they are deeply in love usually, and they are followers of all my work and love my books and stories and all of that. That'd be in my case. If you were being hired by a company, I would say, turn over your data here. I need to find out who the customer is, the average customer, the demographics, your database. And if you really want to excel as a copywriter, call some of those people and talk to them about buying the product or service. Why did you buy? Why did you delay in buying? What do you like best? What do you like least? Looking for the weakness, of course, as well. And if you really want to be the greatest of greatest, go visit a handful of them. Go visit a handful of them in person. Of course, ask for
when we're out of lockdown. Yeah.
Yes, of course, when life has changed and we're allowed out of our nest. But even right now, assuming that I don't know when this interview goes out, but as we're making this interview, we are under the coronavirus. There is a pandemic. We're being asked to stay at home. That's actually so what to copywriters, because most of us work at home. We got internet access. We have phones. We can do pretty much anything that we need to do right here. And if we get hungry, there's a lot of places that'll drive the food right to us and bring it to us. So there's no excuse not to do this work.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is research. And I'm going to give you one more tip here, where one more reason to do the research. In that research, you will often uncover the gem that you'll use for copy. It'll come out of some documentation or a conversation with a customer that they'll just say inadvertently, or somebody had written in a business presentation unconsciously, and you'll go, oh, that's the copy. That's the copy. But you won't know it if you don't do the work. So don't be what I call a psychic copywriter, where you sit there and go, well, I imagine that they'll buy for this reason. You can't know that.
Yeah.
You have to do the legwork. You have to do the research, and maybe your intuition will guide the way afterwards, but you got to feed the intuition with the facts.
Ya, ini Joe Vitale tadi menjawab. Katanya ada riset. Jadi dan menarik menurut Joe Vitale, riset, tanyakan ke perusahaan klien kita punya data customer enggak, data demografi, gaya hidup, dan sebagainya. Tanyakan bagaimana dia membeli, mengapa dia membeli. Dan kalau kita mau lebih hebat menjadi copywriter, telepon mereka. Tanyakan tentang data itu, temukan hal-hal lain. Karena ini menjadi guide, menjadi bimbing kita dalam menulis gitu. Dan kalau lebih bagus lagi, kunjungi mereka. Waktu itu masih COVID, mereka nggak berani kunjungi. Tapi setelah COVID, mereka bisa lakukan kunjungan ini gitu. Dan tentu nilainya besar ya. Kalau kita menjadi konsultan copywriter, kita melakukan begitu banyak usaha, artinya nilainya sebenarnya lumayan kalau menggunakan tulisan itu. Artinya Joe Vitale mengatakan jangan menggunakan psychic, ramalan bahwa saya tahu ini, enggak. Lakukan riset, buat data gitu dari hasil kajian, karena tiap orang tidak sama. Seorang copywriter sering sekali hanya mengira-ngira gitu. Padahal itu belum tentu benar. Karena tiap customer punya preferensi berbeda ketika ingin membeli barang gitu.
I think that's great, and we, as an agency, we always try to encourage our brands, or allow them to allow us to do buyer interviews and or send surveys out and try to gather that voice of customer data. And sometimes I say that not only can it be the gem you find, it might be the exact wording, right? Sometimes
Exactly.
it's they've said
Right.
so perfectly. It's like, why would I change that? You know, my job as a copywriter, you know, I couldn't say it because it's, you know, it's going to resonate because it's come from the mouths of the very people you're trying to sell to.
That's exactly right. You got to be a great listener because they will very often tell you your sales letter.
That's it. Yeah, our job is done, right? Just get the prospect to come and
That's
write
right.
for us. And Joe, it's been really, really amazing.
Ya, ini tadi mereka diskusi. Indahnya kalau melakukan interview, kadang-kadang sales letter sudah terbentuk karena si klien klien kita gitu. Mereka sering sekali mengatakan namanya personal transfer. Kata-kata yang mereka sukai, kata-kata yang mereka membuat mereka mau berinteraksi, kata-kata yang menarik mereka, dan ini sebenarnya kebutuhan mereka. Dan itu sebenarnya kita menemukan sebuah kunci-kunci dari bagaimana menulis sales letter yang baik, bagaimana menulis copywriting yang baik, karena semua data sudah diberikan oleh customer kita gitu. Dan ini menarik sebenarnya gitu.
In talking to you, I love how enthusiastic you are about copywriting. I feel enthused. I was feeling a bit tired today, and now I'm like full of energy. So it's
Good, great.
It's great to talk to you. Thank you so much for all these gems, all these nuggets of wisdom. Of course, as I said, we're going to encourage our community to get your hypnotic writing book as an extra resource. Is there anything else you think that will help them? Anything you want to plug?
Well, I mentioned earlier, I'm a book freak. I'm a book addict. So there's lots of books on copywriting, not by me. I would recommend reading my book, Hypnotic Writing. I am very proud of hypnotic writing. And I also know more people learned how to write or get past their writing blocks because of that book than any other book.
Yeah.
I would also recommend people read the Robert Collier letter book. I was a good writer before it. I was a hypnotic writer after it. The Robert Collier letter book. I would read, there's a book called The Science of Storytelling by Will Storr, S-T-O-R-R, The Science of Storytelling. I would read that. There is a book that deeply influenced me in understanding what the hot buttons are in people, and it was called The Magic Power of Emotional Appeal by Roy Garn, G-A-R-N. The Magic Power of Emotional Appeal. There's all kind of other books I can be talking about. Hypnotic writing by me. I do have another book called Buying Trances that would probably be of interest to your folks, because buying trances is really about putting people into that waking trance where they might buy. So Buying Trances, hypnotic writing, Robert Collier letter book, anything by Dan Kennedy, anything by John Caples. Read David Ogilvy's famous book, Confessions of an Ad Man. God, I can go on.
Yeah, I feel like I could talk to you for hours, but
yeah, this is fun.
This
and
is
you ask
fun.
great questions, Conrad. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it so much. Honestly, like it was amazing catching up with you. Not in, well, almost in person, right? Because it's just been via email. So again, I really, really appreciate it. And I'm sure our community will learn a ton from this. And we'll also we'll chop some bits up and share them on LinkedIn as well. So across our social media channels. So again, thanks again, Joe. Stay safe, stay sane, and we'll catch up soon.
Ya, penutup. Jadi Joe Vitale menceritakan bacalah buku. Joe Vitale cerita hypnotic writing yang pertama menurut saya Robert Collier ya, bukunya tentang hypnotic writing, dan banyak sekali buku-buku, dan menurut saya bacalah buku sebanyak mungkin tentang copywriting gitu. Apalagi kalau bila Anda bergerak di bidang copywriting, di bidang periklanan, di bidang jasa penulisan kata yang membuat orang bisa bergerak bisnisnya karena kita. So, itulah materi pesan-pesan dari Joe Vitale. Dan ini adalah pesan-pesan pertama kita, video pertama kita tentang Joe Vitale. Insya Allah nanti kita, bila ini rekan-rekan tertarik, kita akan buat lagi video sejenis. Kita akan diskusikan tentang komunikasi hypnotic writing, komunikasi copywriting, sehingga teman-teman UKM dalam membuat tulisan menjadi lebih hidup, lebih bermakna, dan lebih memberikan dampak penjualan, dampak keuntungan bagi kita kan semua. Sekian dari kami. Mohon maaf bila ada salah. Dan semoga video ini berguna bagi Bapak Ibu. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.